And I want to welcome Deborah Clinton and Alexandra. They're from Mohawk College, and they have a program that talks about budgeting and money management. And we have found in the past that our participants are very interested in these subjects, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this workshop today. So I thank Deborah and Alexandra for coming. Alexandra will begin by talking about budgeting, and then we're going to have a break. And then Deborah's going to continue on about living on your own, which is really something that a lot of you might have a goal to do. So I think that's very great information for today. So I'm going to be in the background, and then I unfortunately have to leave, but I'm going to leave you in good hands with Deborah and Alexandra. And so I'll welcome you now to take the screen and start the workshop. I'm very excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. So, hello and welcome everybody to Budgeting Basics. As Julie said, my name is Alexandra and I'm the money counselor at Mohawk College at the Money Financial Literacy Resource Center. And I'm here with my colleague, Deb Clinton. She organizes workshops and sessions like these. So let's get started with the first portion of this presentation, which is about budgeting. So first of all, what is a budget and why we should budget? A budget is a money management tool that allows you to optimize the use of your resources so you can achieve your goals and satisfy your needs. In other words, it's a way of organizing your expenses according to your income so you can fulfill your obligations. Why should I budget? A budget is like a roadmap. It ensures you don't overspend. It supports you on reaching your goals. It helps you build new habits. It reduces stress. It reduces or ends the debt cycle. And it helps you to grow your savings. So as I said, it's a tool to help you organize your expenses and your income. So two key words here, income and expenses. We will talk about them later. So let's start by watching a funny video about budgeting and specifically one type of, there are different ways to make a budget. So this is one of them. It's a zero-based budget. So let me just get myself organized so I can share with you this funny video around budgeting and specifically the zero-based budget.
Action!
What is a zero-based budget? Well, let's define a budget first. Your average budget is a monthly estimate of income and expenses with a list of categories. In other words, it's just a plan for your money. At Ramsey Solutions, we recommend taking it one step further with a zero-based budget. The idea here is simple. The money that comes in minus the money that goes out equals zero, meaning you've told every penny exactly where it's going to go. Just like how you told that guy in traffic exactly where he was going to go. Now, making a zero-based budget isn't as hard as it sounds. Step 1, list your take-home pay for the month. Step 2, list all your expenses for the month, but start with these 5 categories: food, shelter, utilities, transportation, and clothing. The basics. You want to make sure your rent or mortgage is budgeted first before you start budgeting for something like your hot yoga membership. Jeff. Once the necessities are taken care of, move to step 3. List the rest of your expenses like haircuts, Netflix, date nights, plus all the stuff your kids need. Man, are kids really that expensive?
Yep.
Golly. Don't let life catch you off guard. Think ahead and plan for events or situations you need to save up for. Holidays, weddings, birthdays, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, chupacabras, you name it. You can even create a fund in your budget to put aside money every month so you're ready when that day comes. Christmas is on December 25th. Again, don't act surprised, people. Now, if you work through every expense for the month and you still have $100 left, you haven't finished your budget quite yet. You've got to get Uncle Ben a job. Put it towards your debt, for example, or maybe buy something that can help you figure this money stuff out. Can't think of anything off the top of my head that could do that. But I can't do a budget because I'm bad at math. Well, lucky for you, there's an app for everything. There's like 5 of them just for finding the nearest bathroom. That's not a joke. Look it up. Get on your smartphone and download our free budgeting tool, EveryDollar, because no matter your end game, paying your way through college, getting out of debt, buying your first home, or even planning for retirement, your budget is the key to keeping it 100. And now you know.
Okay. Let me just go back to my screen the way it was. And did you enjoy the video? I think it's a fun video, but with really good information. As I said, this is one type of budgeting, one system of budgeting, a zero-based budget, but the principles of budgeting are the same. So let's review the steps of budgeting. We have like 3 basic steps. Again, as I said, you can find different ways of budgeting, but the one that we want to share with you today has just 3 basic steps. First, we will set some goals. Then we will see where our money is going, and then we will make a realistic plan that aligns with those goals. So let's begin with the first step. Set some goals. Goal setting. So setting goals is the first step in your budgeting process. Goals are something you want to achieve. It can be anything you set your mind to. Something in the future that you want to do that might be a bit hard. It might be something that you want to change or something that you want to move towards. You could have goals about a lot of different things, like school, work, big purchases, friends and family, sports or exercise, hobbies, long-term plans. It's basically what you are trying to accomplish. You can also have some financial goals, which are something you want to achieve that involves money. So let's talk about those financial goals first. So what are your financial goals? Anything related to money. You can probably want to build an emergency fund, or you want to pay off your debt. You want to make some like fewer impulse expenses. You want to find employment, or you want to achieve financial stability, have a steady income, support your family, you name it. What are your financial goals? Think about it. This is the first step. If you know exactly what you want to achieve, then the next steps for your budgeting process are gonna be easier. So always start by thinking about your goals and try to make your goals smart. That you can say that they are specific, that they are measurable, that they are achievable, that they are realistic, and that they are time bound. So you have a time frame to achieve your goals. So this is very important when you are thinking about your goals. So now let's talk about the second step. Where is your money going? here we are talking about expenses. We truly need to understand our spending habits. Where is our money going? So the first step is to track your spending for at least a month so you can see where your money is really going. You can just use your bank account or just a notebook, or you can just use Excel to track every purchase, every bill, every incoming and outgoing dollar. I recommend you can do this from now on, start tracking your expenses from now on, or you can just go back into your bank statement or credit card statement and see where your money went for the last 3 months, if possible. Online banking is a great tool. So you can track everything, even just as simple as buying a daily coffee. How much did you spend on that? And how much did add up over time? Now that you know where your money is going, it is important to evaluate every expense from a needs versus wants perspective, because our money supply isn't endless. So we need to make sure that our money will last as long as possible. So let's talk about these needs versus wants perspective. So we are talking about thinking about every expense you're going to have and ask yourself, is this a need or is this a want? Needs are those items that are essential in our day-to-day life. Think about a roof over your head, sufficient food to eat, and clothing. Without this essential stuff, your ability to function is impacted. Wants, however, are those nice to have items. A wish, they are not necessary. Without them, your ability to function is not impacted. Think about an extra large pepperoni pizza or a pair of high tops or driving a luxury car. Of course, I know that lots of purchases fall into a gray area. So these definitions have limitation. Let's see the next slide for more clarity on this. So some of the expenses, as I said, can be into a gray area. For instance, most people need a car to get to work or school or run errands, unless they have access to excellent public transportation. But some people may want a luxury car, but what they probably just need is a basic vehicle that gets you from point B to from point A to point B. Food is another gray area. You need to eat something. You need nutritious and enough food. But you may decide to spend money on fast food or going to a nice fancy restaurant downtown. So this is when you need to think about, what is my need? How can I satisfy the need? And what is the decision you're gonna make? I'm gonna just buy groceries at the grocery store, or I'm gonna buy fast food or going out to a nice restaurant. And you can see the same for pretty much every expensive. For clothing, the need is just to have warm and dry clothes, but you may want brand names or labels. For communication, you just need to be connected with people, but you may want to have the latest smartphone, you want to have data. for housing. We just need shelter, but you may want to share accommodation, or you may want to live on your own, or you may want to live in a small apartment, or you may want to live in a big house with a swimming pool. So that's the difference between the need and the want. For personal hair, we need to keep ourselves clean and healthy, but we may want to have pedicures, manicure, hair appointments, or some expensive stuff for personal care. For entertainment, we need a way to unwind, connect with people, but we may want to go to expensive concerts or anything like that. So this is an important thing when we are thinking about needs and want, when we are thinking about an expense. So always when you are gonna spend money on something, just take some time to think. Is this a need or is this a want? There's nothing wrong with spending money on wants. It's just based on your budget. Do you have the money budgeted for this want? So go ahead and spend the money. If you have been careful, understanding your spending, understanding your income, and you know how much you have savings for those wants. So let's do it. But if not, we always want to think first before making a decision of spending money on this or that. Always put that in a balance. Is this a need? Is this a want? Can I afford the one, or I should just stick with the need? The third step is make a realistic plan. Now we're going to talk about the other side of the budget equation. Is the income, our income. We have different sources of income. If you are working, so obviously you have employment income, you're getting some family support, you have some savings, you're getting some income from the government. So what we have to really understand is what's the money coming in from all these different sources, and make a plan to pay for your essential needs first. As this nice guy was telling us in the video, we have to pay for our essential needs first. So we have to pay for rent, we have to pay for obviously utilities, if we have to pay hydro or gas, if we need to have internet, it's important to pay for that first, then obviously food. And then after paying for that, if we have some money left, so this is when you have money to budget for other stuff, discretionary expenses. So we have some other categories of expenses that I want to share with you guys now. We have two big categories of expenses. The first one is fixed expenses. The second one is discretionary expenses. Fixed expenses are due every month. They don't normally change. Same amount every single month, same due date. Examples of fixed expenses: rent and utilities, like transportation if you are buying a bus pass, car and home insurance, your cell phone, your internet, if you are paying some subscriptions like Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, or Disney Plus, or Apple Music. If you have some savings goals, so normally it's a fixed expense. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to put $25 every month into my tax-free saving account or my RRSP. If you are repaying some debt, normally it's a fixed expense. I'm paying $100 2 hours, my credit card every month, or my car loan is 150 bi-weekly, so they are normally fixed. You may be able to lower your monthly bills by shopping around. So we always recommend shop around and see if you can get a better deal for your cell phone or your internet. Some of them are easier to kind of negotiate with your internet provider or even move to another company that can offer you a cheaper package. The second group is, we call them discretionary expenses. They are not fixed, obviously, they can change often. I normally like to divide this group into two kind of subcategories. The first one is monthly, and the second one is not monthly or irregular. So we have to spend money monthly on groceries, on gasoline if we have a car. We have to spend money monthly probably on entertainment. Even if we just go out once a month to have I don't know, some fun with friends. Those are monthly expenses. They are not fixed, but they are monthly. So you know, you can plan for those expenses depending on your income and how much you have available after paying your fixed expenses. So then my recommendation is try to set a limit for those variable monthly expenses and try to stick to that budget. For instance, you can say, I'm not going to spend more than $300 on groceries a month. So try to stick to that amount by, I don't know, paying in cash, taking the money out from your bank account and put it in an envelope. That's one way to stick to that budget for your monthly variable expenses. The second group that I have within this group of discretionary expenses are irregular expenses. So they are not monthly, but they are predictable. We know that they will happen at least once a year. For example, Christmas. He was telling about Christmas as well in the video. We know every 25th of December is gonna be Christmas, so plan for it. If you have a car, you know that, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year, you have to change the oil, or twice a year, you have to change the tires at the beginning of winter and then at the end of winter. We don't normally buy clothes every month. Probably you just every season, you go out and buy some clothes. Travel, we don't travel every month. We don't buy gifts every month. Probably we have some birthdays every 2 months and obviously gifts for Christmas. So those expenses are not monthly, but they are predictable. You know that they will happen. So my recommendation for those type of expenses is try to make a list of all of them. That's why tracking is very important. If you go back in your bank statement and see, oh yes, in September I have to spend money on this, and this. December, this, on this. Add all those amounts and say, okay, I'm gonna be spending on my irregular expenses over the year $1,200. So then we need to plan. We need to start allocating money monthly for those non-monthly expenses, to start saving for those irregular expenses. In this example, $1,200 a year. So why don't you try to put $100 aside every month? So whenever the expense arises, you know that you have the money saved and you don't have to probably use credit to pay for those expenses. This is a great system to keep you away from trouble, to keep you away from a lot of debt. So I normally recommend to have at least 3 bank accounts. You can have your main bank account, your checking account, where your payroll is coming, where you are making your payments, bill payments, and everything for your fixed expenses. And then another account where you're gonna be saving for these irregular expenses. So putting aside these $100, in my example, for your 1,200 irregular expenses. And there's a third account that we haven't talked about, but I think is very important, is an account where you should be saving for emergencies. So an emergencies is unexpected. So you cannot predict that that is going to happen, that your pet, your dog is going to get sick and you have to take it to the vet. So it's going to be a large bill to pay for the vet. Those type of things, they are unexpected. So if you have some money saved, like an emergency fund, that will help you to stay away from debt as well. So this is what I wanted to share about your expenses, the type of expenses. So now we know we have basically 2 things to consider when budgeting: my income, my expenses, and we are going to try to balance those income and expenses. You can use the zero balance system that he explained to us, which, as he said, is income minus expenses is 0. That's a good one. This is the one that I actually do, and I love it. But you can find some other budgeting systems. If you just ask Google, you will find some of them, but we like this one. That's why we are sharing this system with you guys. Now, to end this portion, I just want to share with you some apps where you can use some of the resources that they have. We have some My Money Coach that is going to be just an Excel spreadsheet that will help you. There's Mint, there's Every Dollar. That those are more for you guys, young people that are super good with technology, so you can use your phone and that will help you with your budgeting process. Just don't forget that it is important to make a budget that you can really like reach your goals. That is a realistic budget. So it's important to analyze your expenses in the past and be realistic and flexible. By realistic, I mean, you may think that, okay, I can live with $100 for groceries a month, but that is probably not realistic. So then you will fail in your budgeting process. Why is this not working? It's maybe because $100 is not enough, especially nowadays when everything is super expensive. Be realistic, be flexible. So this is when you review your budget and you make some adjustments. Every week, at least every month, you need to have a budgeting date with yourself, with your partner, just to review how things are going and make some changes and adjust your budget. We always recommend to also set some money aside to have fun. It is important to have fun. If you don't do that, you may fail in your budgeting process as well. Practice some self-control and try to find contentment by practicing gratitude. That's also very important if we want to succeed on this budgeting piece. This is everything that I wanted to share with you in this first portion of the presentation about budgeting. If you have any questions, please let me know. Deb and I will be happy to answer the questions. Then we're gonna have a 15 minutes break, and then we will be back for the second portion of this presentation about getting ready to move out.
So thanks very much for that, Alexandra. I think, you know, every time I go through these presentations, I always learn something new. And one of the things that I think you talked about was actually, you know, sitting down and going through your budget on a regular basis. You know, it's so important to kind of have that reality check. And so what's working and what's not. And sometimes, you know, I find that there's just not enough money to, you know, and I'm, you know, I can see where, you know, I'm running into problems. And so then that's a whole other conversation, you know, so, you know, what other ways can I increase my income? Because my, you know, my income is not clearly enough to pay for what I want to do. So I really like that idea of sitting down regularly and reviewing it. Has anybody else you know, that's here today have any budgeting tips that they would recommend? And you can, I'm not sure you can unmute yourself, but you could raise your hand or put it in the chat because, oh, okay, Alex.
I just wanted to say one good thing that I've realized is having cash on you makes things, it makes you feel a lot more rich than you are, and you can spend a lot more money than, you know, just having it in your account. Yeah, that way you can look at how much money is actually there instead of just what's in your hand kind of thing.
Right. So
that is great. Sorry there.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say this is really a good tip, a good way of managing your money. I was talking about the envelope system. So you can have an envelope for having fun. My daughter actually used it, and she has an envelope for movies, whatever she likes doing, like one for movies, one for groceries, one for what else she has, gasoline for her car, those type of things. But I don't have that, but I just can have just one and say, okay, this is my money for the week. This is my allowance for the week. And whenever the envelope is empty, I'm done. I cannot spend more money. And my son, he's younger than my daughter, the other day was telling me, I don't know, I feel that when I'm spending money using cash, I feel kind of bad. I'm spending too much. I don't want to spend my cash. Because when you are just tapping your debit card, it feels so easy. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So it's a really good tip, Alex. It's a really good one. Some of us like really are good with that. Some people prefer using debit cards or credit cards, but this is a really good tip. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Right. So Alexandra, there's a question in the chat about if you have any tips to stop impulse spending. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, that is a tricky question because we are humans, and so one of the things that I shared with you before is this needs versus wants. So yeah, when you are about purchasing something, even online, or you are at the store, try to stop for a second and think about it. Is this a need? Is this a want? So that's something that you can do. Now the problem is it's so easy to spend money, especially online. You just go online, Amazon, whatever you use, and just hit enter and you spend money. As easy as that. Yeah. But if you're gonna spend money, if you go to the mall, don't bring your debit card or your credit card. If this is something that happened to you, I just cannot just go window shopping. I'm gonna end up buying something. So don't bring your debit card or your credit card. That will help you to yes, avoid like spending on things that you don't really need, because this
Right.
is normally what happens. You end buying something that you don't need. You go home and say, oh my God, I did buy this, I don't really need it. And I was also talking about contentment. That is really something that we all need to build, like self-control and contentment. That's easy to say than really done it. I know myself. I'm obviously much older, like older than you, so I know I've been in this process longer than you guys. But finding contentment, being grateful for what you have, uh, will also help to prevent those impulse shopping. This is what I can share with you. I don't know if you have any other tips about that
Yeah.
yet.
Alexandra, Andrew put a really great comment, like, so my guidance for himself is to curb impulse spending, is to try to sleep on any sizable purchases. So, and that's great for any big decision, right? Whether it's spending money or what you're going to, what you might be doing next year. Sometimes I also will say, I'm going to sleep on that. And I might just think about it differently in the morning. And so those are wonderful suggestions. And I think the key is to find out what works for you, because everybody's different. And, certainly giving yourself some time. And I don't know if anybody else has had this experience, but I'll go online and I'll put things into my shopping cart and then I'll walk away, right? Like I'll just save it and walk away. And then, I'll wait 24 hours and then go back and say, no, I changed my mind about that. And I take things out of my shopping cart. So, virtual can be, it's impulsive, and you can get into trouble virtually. But there are strategies that you can use that can kind of curb that. And also, I'm kind of like, if I'm feeling a little blue or a little down, or something has happened that made me a little sad, I don't go shopping, because shopping gives you if you go out and you buy something for yourself, you get that feel good, that feel good feeling, and so I've just, I'll go for a walk, or I'll turn on some of my favorite music. I won't go shopping when I'm feeling that way, and I find that really helps too. But it's about knowing yourself. So are there any other questions regarding budgeting that we can answer before we go on a 15-minute break? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So we must have covered off pretty much everything. So guys, it's 1:24. This is going to be a faster session than I think that you were expecting. So we're going to take a break and let's just reconvene, at 20 to 2, if that's okay with everyone. Get up, shake your legs, go get a coffee, get a glass of water, just and come back with a fresh perspective, because we're going to go into how you can organize moving out on your own. All right, so we'll see you in 15.
Perfect.
Okay. Kind of nice to take a break, right, Alexandra? Kind of like get up and move around. Sometimes I feel like my bum is molded into my chair.
Yeah. It's great.
Oh, and I turned the recording on, so that's actually in the recording. That's okay. That's okay. So welcome back, everybody. We'll give everybody a couple of seconds to get in. So we're going to start this section about, moving out and living on your own with a video. Now, up front, I want to tell you that this is an American video. And so she does reference Chicago, but most of the stuff she talks about, and she's pretty animated, is relevant in Canada. So I'm just going to ask Alexandra to start the video, and we can talk about it. It's about 15 minutes, so it's a little long, but we'll see if we need to cut it short, we will.
Okay, so let me know when we're ready to start.
Yeah.
Are we all back? Okay,
Yes.
so let's begin.
Hello friends, it's Tess, this is Wander Wealthy, and today I'm going to give you my top tips for renting your first apartment. Nothing better than cold coffee, and not iced coffee, just old cold coffee. Getting ready to rent your first apartment is a lot harder than the world makes it out to be. There are a lot of things that you need to know, from how much you can afford to why your potential landlord is asking you for your social security number. And that is what I want to help you uncover today. So I have compiled 9 common questions, or just things I think you should probably look out for before you sign on the dotted line. Before I dive into this wonderful list, I just need to tell you, especially if you're new here, to make sure you hit that subscribe button, because if you're someone who's interested in personal finance, personal growth, or travel, that's what we talk about here on Wander Wealthy, and I don't want you to miss out on the future vids that I upload on a weekly basis. And if you're watching this video and you're like, I like this, or you find yourself just nodding along or taking notes, then go ahead and hit that thumbs up button so I know to make more videos like this. Plus, it really supports my channel, and I'll be forever grateful. All right, let's get in. The first thing that you're probably going to wish you would have known if you need an apartment like ASAP, or if you're months away, this is the best thing to know, is that yes, in order to get an apartment, you will probably have to have some form of good credit history. This is exactly why your landlord is asking you to fill out a sheet that has your social security number on it, because most landlords or rental companies are going to want to pull your credit history so that they can get a feel for how credible or financially responsible you are with making payments on time. One thing that you can do before you even get on your apartment search, maybe you're midway through your last year of college, or you're just not quite yet to move out of mom and dad's, is check your credit score. You can do this through free platforms like Credit Karma or CreditSesame.com. I'll link both of them below, or through any major credit card that you utilize. Usually credit cards will offer you a free look at your credit score. Checking your credit score now does not hurt your credit. You are fully entitled to knowing what 3 numbers are your defining one. Now here's the thing, if you don't have a credit score because you have no credit history, this was me. And there are a few ways where you can get around this when you're trying to go rent a place. For me, I actually had a roommate planned for when I moved to Chicago. She was already in Chicago, I was still home in Iowa. So she took the onus to go find an apartment for the 2 of us. In that process, she found one, she met with the landlords, signed a lease agreement, they pulled her credit, and we were approved. I'm not exactly sure how it ended up happening. I may have even filled out information for them to pull my credit, but I'm almost positive I had no history. In that case, whether they did or did not pull my credit, I'm pretty sure they probably just went with my roommate's credit and decided that she was responsible enough to make sure that I was responsible enough. Now, in this situation, you really need to have a roommate that you trust, and luckily we had a great, and still do have a great relationship, where she could trust that I was going to pay her my portion of the rent, and then she would make the full rent payment. But again, you gotta make sure that they're good people. Another option is to have a parent or a relative co-sign for you on your lease agreement. That way the landlord knows that maybe you don't have a score yet, but you're just out of college and you haven't had a lot of financing. And then they have someone else to go to in case you forget to make your payment. And finally, an additional potential workaround would be to not necessarily rent through bigger companies who definitely have it in their regular protocol to run a potential tenant's credit. So finding people on Craigslist or just through a family friend, someone that you know, could be your best bet for getting a rental. Now, if you're watching this well in advance and you have a few months to start building that credit score, then here is what you should do. Get a credit card and put a very small expense on it. Buy a pack of gum or put your Netflix subscription on it and then have it automatically withdraw the payment amount from your bank account every single month so that it pays the full balance on time and in full. This will show the credit bureaus that you are a responsible credit citizen. You have credit available, but you only use a very tiny amount and you pay it off every single time it comes due. After a few months, the credit bureaus will like that history and they will bump up your score. And it provides now your potential landlords with more information on your ability to be financially responsible. Again, all the resources I mentioned here about credit, which can be a confusing topic, are going to be linked below and you can get access to all of them and they're all free. All right, moving on to number 2. I get this question all the time. How much should I pay in rent? My standard answer is always, it depends, but there's some good rules of thumb for you to know. First rule of thumb is the 50-30-20 rule. This is a rule for budgeting in general, or I guess cash flow management in general. It states that 50% of your income should be used for fixed expenses. These are things like your rent, also utilities, cable and internet bills, cell phone bills, debt payments, don't forget about those, insurance, car payments, which are debt payments, and anything else that you pay on a fixed monthly basis, or even annual or semi-annual. So all of those added up will and should only equal 50% or less of your monthly income. A portion of that would be your rent. The less you can live on, the more you can save, and your future self will thank you for it. I love the saying, live like a college student as long as it's socially acceptable. And while you're in your early 20s, it's totally socially acceptable. You don't have to get that 1-bedroom apartment that's way more expensive just because you feel like you need to be an adult now. You can be just as much an adult with 3 other roommates and less fancy furniture because you care about your financial future. Now, I'm not saying this to judge people who live in their own apartments. I live in my own apartment. But if you're willing to live a little bit uncomfortably for a handful of years, you can live amazingly comfortably for the rest of your life. And I wouldn't say that's the same case for most human beings. Now, 2 additional rules of thumb that specifically relate to how much of your monthly income should you spend on rent are the 30% or 1/3 rule and the 25% rule. This just depends how conservative you want to be. So, some people will say you should only spend 1/3 of your monthly income on your monthly rent costs. This would equal about 30% of your monthly salary. Side tip, I'm talking about salary after taxes and benefits because let's not kid ourselves, we still have to pay taxes. Since 30% is under that 50% fixed, it's saying that 30% should go towards rent, and so the remaining 20% you're going to have to use for everything else that you spend money on a fixed basis. Now, other experts will say that you should only spend 25% of your income on rent. It just really depends how flexible you can be with your budget and your fixed expenses. But just remember that 25% or 30%, whatever it is spent on rent, the remaining of that 50% fixed is going towards all the other things that you need to pay for. Now, tip number 2B is to ask the potential landlord or whoever is showing you the apartment what the price of rent includes, because sometimes the price of rent could include utilities or other things that you would otherwise have to pay for, and that can help you in your budgeting decisions when you're sitting down and going, okay, so 30% of my income has to be this rental price, but it also includes utilities and so on and so forth. Tip number 3 is just spiraling off of the last statement, which is to get an estimate on the utility bills that you'll be paying. While you're getting that rental apartment walkthrough, make sure to ask the person who's showing you the apartment what the current tenants pay on average for utilities every month and what those utilities include. You'll want to know what the general area costs are for cable and internet, but also the utilities of the specific unit like gas, electric, and sometimes even water. And finally, you're going to want to get yourself some renter's insurance, and you can get some quotes from various insurance companies online so that you can add that into your knowledge bank. Renter's insurance is so important to have, and it's not that expensive, but do yourself a service and protect your belongings. Tip number 4 is not gonna help us get any cheaper. It's trying to figure out the costs for additional things that you might require in order to live your life in your new or potentially new rental. Whether you have a car and you need a place to park or a garage to put it in, or you need storage space, these could all be additional costs, or they could be included in your rental fees. You also want to know if you need to pay for garbage pickup. And finally, if you have any pets, they might charge you a pet fee. But getting an idea of what all these fees could potentially be for you is also going to help you determine how much you really can spend or afford when it comes to finding yourself a place to live. Tip number 5 is to save and pre-save, because unfortunately, move-in date is probably going to be the most expensive one. You're most likely going to have to put down a deposit for the landlord to keep in case you damage anything. And that could be anywhere from 1 month's worth of rent to 3 months, or just an arbitrary number that they come up with. Don't worry, you'll get this back at the end of your rental agreement, but you need to at least have the funds to be able to front that. Along with the deposit, you're also going to need to make that first month's rent payment. So I know it's an expensive time. And beyond that, there's also the move-in costs. They might charge you a move-in fee. They might charge you administrative fees to process the paperwork. There's a lot of little small fees, but also if you have movers moving your stuff, which I highly recommend because it's very wonderful, can be very expensive, then you're gonna have to add that up too. Again, those move-in costs are going to come at you fast and hard. So set up a separate bank account and start stashing away some cash for this particularly expensive time of your life. Tip number 6 is to find yourself a roommate. I know it can be totally sexy to finally have this idea and vision of you living on your own in your very own apartment, but the reality is, moving into a new city can be very expensive. But if you want to live on less and stash away more cash for a brighter financial future, then finding a roommate is a great option for you, and it can significantly decrease your costs. Tip number 7 is all about furnishing your apartment. Now, if you do choose to go the roommate route, then you're gonna wanna have communication, which is key. What I did with my first roommate is we actually came up with a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet of all the things we thought we would need for our space. And then we both individually went in and filled out what we had and what we could contribute. That way, if we had duplicates, we didn't both have to worry about bringing them. And if we had things that we knew we needed to acquire, we could come to an agreement on who would buy what and then who would own that thing. Now, if you are moving into your own place and you're wanting to furnish it with the most beautiful, well interior designed elements, hold your horses. I've heard so many people talk about the mistakes that they made with their first apartment by furnishing it on a credit card, and that can very much hurt you, as you all know. I would try to find as many hand-me-downs that your family can provide, or go to a used furniture store. Buy something that isn't going to totally break the bank and will be a good placeholder until you've been able to save up for that amazing sofa from a West Elm that you've been dreaming about. This is something I recently did as I was tasked to fully furnish my own condo after my old roommate moved out, and it was the best decision I made. I made a list of all the things I thought I would need with the expected prices, or the actual prices if I had already found something and put it on my wish list. And then I opened up a separate bank account specifically for home decor. Every month I would stash away some money into that separate bank account, and when I hit a monetary level of something that I could afford, I would transfer that money out into my checking account and go buy it. That way I never had to go in debt for the things I wanted, and I found that I actually was able to furnish my place relatively quickly. Tip number 8 is just a great money saving tip, and that is to understand your thermostat and the parameters of the degrees that you should have during different times of the year. I know in the winter you're going to want to crank that heat up to 75, but your wallet will be crying. And in the summer, when you want to crank your air conditioning down to 60 after you get in from a hot day, you're just not going to be able to afford anything else. Do yourself a service and look up what the recommended thermostat settings are for each time of year and save yourself some money. And finally, tip number 9 is to have a clear understanding of the terms on your lease agreement or your rental agreement or contract. Want to Airbnb that spare bedroom? It may not be illegal. Want to move out ASAP because you can't stand your roommate? You might be stuck paying 3 or 6 months of rent. Want to get a dog? Good luck. There are certain rules and regulations that are within your rental agreement that you might want to consider understanding. You want to make sure before you sign on the dotted line that you do a full review and you have that knowledge, but also keeping that rental or lease agreement around as your lifestyle changes will be useful for you. It's also a great way to know when it's time to move on to the next place, even if you love it, but your lifestyle just doesn't allow for it. And those are my 9 money tips for renting your first apartment. I hope they were helpful. If they were, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what tip you particularly like and are thankful for, or what additional tips you might have for future viewers down in the comments below.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Alexandra, for putting that video on. So I'm wondering what people's thoughts are about this. So there were 9 tips. Did she nail it? Do you think that she was, covered most of what you need to know, or did she miss anything? Anybody got any thoughts about that? And you can just unmute yourself if you have a comment or raise your hand, or it's kind of nice to hear somebody else's perspective on moving out. And all of those points that she made, I think, were pretty relevant to Canada and our situation as well. So the whole moving out experience, nobody's an expert on it. So the next couple of slides that we're going to go through is really about a guided conversation, because everybody has different needs, everybody has different different wants and approaches things differently. So we really want to hear your thoughts on this. So are you ready to live on your own? So we felt that it would probably be good to organize this in 3 stages: the planning stage, the packing stage, and then the moving out stage. So in the planning stage, you want to talk, about what you can afford. So, the Hamilton rents, and if you're thinking of renting in Hamilton, the rents have gone crazy. I've heard different figures that, for a 1-bedroom apartment, in a decent building, you're talking, a lot of significant money, like $800 to $1,500 a month, which is just, very difficult to afford on your own. And then, so what, are there other options? I've known a lot of people go into sort of like room renting, where you've got communal areas, but you rent your room, and then you have several different roommates, and they may change over the course of time. But that's certainly far more affordable than renting a 1-bedroom on your own. And just like, the girl in the video mentioned as well, you know, at a basement apartment, or someone that you know, a family member that's willing to rent you a part of a house may also be more reasonable. So there's always lots to think about, and you're best to do some research about, you know, what it is you really want and what it is it's going to really cost. So, you know, it again, those are the things you need to consider. And if you're going to go the roommate option, what are the things that are deal breakers for you? It's almost, you know, living with someone can be very difficult, as you know, you probably understand. So, you know, you have to have a solid kind of communication plan, like how are you going to clean the kitchen? Whose turn is it to clean the bathroom? Some of those chore like things, best to have on a schedule, and best to be clear about your communication on them. So also leasing agreements, and she, you know, she talked about this a little bit in the video, but a leasing agreement is a legal document. So when you sign that, it protects you, but it also protects the landlord. So, you know, be very clear about, you know, if you're 100% into renting, and if you're not a hell yes, I want this apartment or I want this place, then maybe have somebody take a look at the leasing agreement. But before you sign it, just really understand what it's saying. And there are lots of people that can help you do that. So then the next stage, once you found a place, wonderful, you can afford it. Isn't that terrific? So now you're thinking, okay, now what kind of room do I have? You know, did I get a room? Did I get a small section of a house? Did I get a 1-bedroom apartment? The best thing to do is to start looking at your things and saying, I don't need to take that. Like, you know, I have grown children, and I still have boxes upon boxes of their things in my house, because they decided that they didn't want to take them when they moved out, and mom is stuck with them. So, you know, you can always do that option, but you know, you should only take what you need, right? And in terms of buying the essentials, you can't go out all at once and buy everything that you need. If this is your first time, you know, you got to really think about, you know, so do I want a coffee maker? Do I need a can opener? What are the things that I need? And best to kind of space out those purchases to maybe like once every couple of weeks that you'll go out and buy something, because buying it all at once can be very expensive. And also when you are packing, you know, pack by the room. So all your bathroom stuff will go into one box, all your kitchen stuff goes into another box, all your bedroom stuff goes in, because that way when you're moving these boxes, you know exactly what room to put them in. So labeling your boxes is packing smart, right? So, and then we go into sort of the moving out stage. You've got your place, you can afford it, everything's great that way. You've got your planning is done, you've got all the things that you need, you're ready to move out. So when you get the keys to your new place, you need to inspect it. And if you have a phone with a camera, which most do these days, take pictures of anything that you're not happy with, and make sure that you document if something is broken, and send it to, you know, get it all together and send it to your landlord, because you know, they may come back at you at the end of your tenancy and say you did that, and you know you didn't. It was there upon move-in, and then if you want to get it fixed, you have to send them an email or a text with the picture and say, you know, I'd like to get this fixed. This is what I found when I moved in. Very important that you don't want to be responsible for damage that another tenant did. So a good tip with this is to keep your paperwork organized. So keep your bills related to living on your own, you know, together. So keep it with your leasing agreement, keep any of your utility bills together, your cable bills, your phone bills, those kind of bills, keep them together. And then your other bills, try to keep track of your spending as well. Very much like Alexandra talked to you about your fixed costs and your more your flexible costs, because that's going to be able to help you review your budget regularly. And if everything is in the one place, it's a lot easier to do. So check out your new neighborhood, right? Like if you weren't familiar with your neighborhood, you need to do a little bit of exploring, because there may be a really cheap place to pick up coffee or a muffin. There could be an excellent place that's, a place to get supplies or things for your apartment. There may be lots of interesting stores or places that you can go and socialize, like a coffee house or things like that. So it's always good to know your neighborhood and also know your neighbors, right? Say hello, get to know your neighbors, get to know who belongs in your neighborhood, because that's a really good safety plan, is knowing who's a stranger in your neighborhood and who's not, who belongs. It can help you with anything where you're feeling comfortable or not comfortable. Now, I know Alexandra talked a lot about sort of cooking and, eating out, and how you kind of need to think about how you want to handle that. Cooking for yourself is definitely cheaper and the most economical way to go. But it can be, to get some variety, it can be challenging. So you kind of need to think about, how many meals a week do I need to plan for? And always, with any good budget and any good meal planning, it's always nice to build in a treat at some point. Okay, I'm going to eat out, I'm going to have fast food once a week, I can budget for that. And then you don't feel like you're deprived, because I think the reason why most budgets don't work is because they're not meeting your needs. So if your needs is that I definitely have to have some, a burrito once a week, and I don't want to make it, have that burrito and build it into your budget. It'll go a long way for you to keeping, on track with your cooking and on track with your budgeting. Now, a lot of people talk about how to do groceries, and that there's a great way, to minimize your costs when you're doing groceries. So there's a rule of thumb that when you walk into a grocery store, you should just do the 4 walls. And if you look at all grocery stores are designed this way. So you're going to walk in and you're going to get your fruits and vegetables, maybe some of your dairy and meat at the back, and then maybe some of your frozen foods on the other corner. And then you're going to get, if you do the big square, you're going to get to the checkout. All of those other aisles in between are usually where you're going to spend the most money, and are things that you may or may not need. Everybody needs some basic stuff in there, in what I call a larder, but it's just a cupboard. Flour, sugar, those sorts of things that are going to allow you to have some variety. Buying canned goods on sale, doing that kind of stuff is always going to be very helpful for you. And anything that has a long shelf life is not a bad thing to purchase if you're going to use it. So try, and never go shopping hungry. I make that mistake all the time, and I come home with chips and chocolate bars, and those are the things that you really don't need to be spending your money on. The greatest treats, but they're not the biggest bang for your buck. So the next thing is that I had put some links in the chat, and I'm going to put them in again, because there's a couple of things that you want to talk to you about. you know, a relationship with your landlord, always to kind of best to keep it civil and try to, you know, have good communication. But that doesn't necessarily always happen. And so there are resources in Hamilton and in the province of Ontario that you should, as a renter, you know, have in your back pocket. And that's sort of like, you know, just knowing your rights as a tenant. So you know, there's lots of resources on the website, and I put the links in the chat. And then there, if you ever did end up having problems in terms of paying your rent, or maybe, you know, you know, there's been some noise complaints or things like that, you may end up having to have some conversation with the Labor Tenant Tribunal. So I put that link in there because they have a lot of good information that you need to know as a tenant, and if, you know, you're having trouble with your landlord. Also, there's an agency in Hamilton that's called the Housing Help Center. Now, they used to be located down on Main Street, but I'm not sure if they're still there or not. But I put their link in there. They're wonderful in terms of having housing listings that are reasonable or that are a little bit more affordable. Their staff there are also very helpful. And if you're looking for a place to live, they can help you and assist you with looking through some listings. They also have, you know, books on all the rent geared to income or subsidized housing in Hamilton, which is an option. You know, and when the girl in the video was talking about 30% of your rent, 30% of your income should be your rent. Most subsidized rental housing in Hamilton is calculated on your income, and it would be 30% of your rent. So that is an option that you have in Hamilton, other than renting privately or through a friend. So, you know, I've put those links in the chat. And I, you know, definitely these are the videos recorded. So I'm just wondering if there's any questions that you have about the presentation, about living on your own, or have you got any great tips of how you found a place, or, you know, some, you know, because you guys are the experts too. I'm seeing nothing. Oh, Kaya.
I found this really interesting and helpful. I moved out like 4 days ago, so I'm a little late on some tips that could have been helpful at the time. But I guess in terms of like how I found housing, a lot of times places like Kijiji or like groups on Facebook, if you're a college student, if you go on the college's like Facebook group, there's sometimes specific ones of students asking for like looking for roommates. But it is good to like be safe when you are like visiting the apartment and like looking for a roommate and checking out who you're with. Like I made sure that I went with my boyfriend and my mom when I came to look at places, and also just because I knew my mom would probably like know how to do things better than me. But yeah.
Right, great. And so far so good then? Good, good, good. That's great tips. Has anybody else got any questions or any tips to share on how they found a place? Okay, that's okay. And if you think of anything, please feel free to, you can follow us on our Instagram and our Facebook. But you can also through Julie, or Christina, if you have any questions, you can forward them to us and we'll answer them. And I know that Christina wanted to just have a couple of words with you before we finish up today. So thank you very much.
And I just wanted to say thank you, Deborah and Alexandra, for this very helpful, informative workshop for everyone. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with the group. So we really appreciate it.
Great. Love to do it again. So
Yeah, our pleasure.
yeah.